19 Black R&B legends who had the dirtiest private lives. Astonishment, profound sorrow, and deep reflection are the emotions I feel after researching and learning about more than 100 famous black figures connected to controversial, private hidden corners, deeply guarded secrets, and astonishing falls from grace behind the brilliant spotlight of R&B legends. It might leave you stunned. This video is perfectly suited to play while you are resting, enjoying a meal with your family, or leisurely doing housework. Please follow the channel, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell to receive our newest videos. Now let us step right into our first figures. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, is one of humanity's greatest icons. He completely changed the face of world music with his moonwalk and the best-selling albums of all time. However, behind that blinding glory was a private life filled with controversy and psychological shadows lingering from his youth. The allegations regarding his private life at the Neverland estate became one of the most documented cases in Hollywood history, creating a media storm that the world still debates today, long after his departure. From an analytical perspective, Michael Jackson's tragedy is that of a child who was never allowed to grow up. Deprived of a childhood by his father's severe discipline, Michael spent his entire adult life trying to rebuild a fairyland where he felt safe. I believe the greatest heartbreak here did not come from him personally, but from the absolute solitude of a genius standing at the pinnacle. When a man holds ultimate power, but possesses a soul as fragile as crystal, the boundary between innocence and controversial behavior becomes extremely blurred. Prolonged legal battles not only eroded his finances, but also severely took a toll on his mental well-being, turning a musical angel into a somber figure in the eyes of the public. For mature audiences, we view Michael with empathy rather than judgment. We see a man who dedicated his life to art but could not find peace in his own home. His sudden departure in 2009 remains a sorrowful low note, reminding us of the exorbitant price of fame. While controversies about his private life remain, no one can deny the humanitarian musical legacy he left behind. Michael Jackson will always be a reminder that behind a sparkling aura, there is sometimes a soul crying out due to the lack of true love. James Brown. James Brown was hailed as the hardest working man in show business. He was the maestro of funk, the man who laid the foundation for hip-hop and brought explosive energy to the stage. However, while he was a highly disciplined leader with his band on stage in his private life, James Brown was a man facing many struggles with emotional control and legal issues. Stories of a quick-temper arrests due to harsh behavior and a volatile lifestyle created a portrait in stark contrast to his radiant public smile. Analyzing his personality deeply, we see a contradiction between a massive ego and unhealed psychological wounds. Born into ultimate poverty and having faced incarceration in his youth, James Brown built his career with an iron will, but also an excessive wariness of the world around him. I evaluate that his severe behavioral habits and family relationships were a consequence of a life spent constantly fighting to survive. He yearned for absolute respect, but often used the wrong methods to achieve it. The failure here is the surrender of reason to instinct, where a man could not find a balance between artistic power and gentleness in his private life. For our middle-aged audience, James Brown is a memory of the strength and pride of the black community. However, his private story also brings a costly lesson about emotional management. Social success cannot fill internal moral voids if we do not learn to treat those closest to us with kindness. James Brown passed away in 2006, leaving an enormous musical legacy, but also a reminder of the fragility of fame when it is not accompanied by internal peace. We cherish his talent, but use his life as a mirror to remind ourselves of the value of composure and compassion within the family. James Brown left a brilliant legacy, but one full of scratches. Would you believe that an angel of love with the sweetest voice in the world would have his life ended in a tragic incident involving his own biological father? The sorrowful secret of Marvin Gaye will be revealed right now. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye possessed a voice as sweet as honey, someone who turned love songs like Sexual Healing into a remedy for millions of souls. He was the embodiment of supreme charm and artistic sensitivity. Yet in contrast to his radiant lyrics about love, Marvin Gaye's life was a series of prolonged tragedies, spanning substance dependency, toxic relationships, and a devastating end involving his own father. In his personal journals, he once admitted to extreme thoughts regarding possessiveness and a blind faith in instinctive emotions. From a psychological standpoint, Marvin Gaye's tragedy lay in the conflict between faith and desire. Raised under the severe education of a father who was a minister, Marvin was always torn between religious moral standards and a yearning for personal freedom. I perceive that the habit of secretly filming girlfriends and the psychological games in relationships that he once admitted to were not acts of pure malice, but the manifestation of a soul deeply hurt and craving control out of fear of abandonment. The betrayal here is that he used music to preach about love while letting his private life sink into doubt and pain. Mature audiences listening back to Marvin Gaye's music will surely feel the deep sadness hidden behind those smooth melodies. He departed in 1984 one day before his 45th birthday, leaving a major question for posterity about the salvation of art. Marvin Gaye's story teaches us that outstanding talent is never enough if we cannot save ourselves from internal darkness. Loyalty and respect in love must not only be lyrics but actual deeds. We love Marvin for his music, but we also mourn for a genius who could not find a peaceful haven in his own heart. Ray Charles. Ray Charles was honored worldwide as the genius, the man who overcame the darkness of blindness and racial discrimination to change soul and country music forever. The image of him sitting at the piano with a radiant smile inspired generations. However, behind those genius notes was a private life filled with dark patches, including a 20-year struggle with dependency on harsh substances and complex relationships with numerous women. He had at least 12 children, with 9 different women, creating a shocking and controversial private profile in R&B history. Analyzing further, we see Ray Charles as a man who craved absolute control to compensate for his loss of sight. His betrayals toward his wives and backup dancers were not just physical infidelity, but a breach of trust with those who were entirely devoted to him. I believe that his habit of using money and power to cover up mistakes was a critical flaw in the character of this genius. His being placed on a watch list by authorities due to an irregular lifestyle shows the price of excessive freedom when standing at the peak of fame. Looking back at Ray Charles's journey, middle-aged viewers cannot help but admire his extraordinary will, but they must also remain clear-eyed about their idol's hidden corners. He passed away in 2004, leaving an immortal musical legacy but also property disputes among his many children. Ray Charles's story is a reminder that natural talent can bring glory, but only self-discipline and honesty bring lasting respect. We cherish his soul's eyes in music, but also feel regret for a man who let instinct sweep away the peace of his own family. Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry was the one who laid the first bricks for rock and roll with classic hits like Johnny B. Good. He was a symbol of creativity and a captivating performance style. However, that great image was severely fractured by private scandals involving his habit of secretly recording women in the restrooms of his own restaurant. A class action lawsuit in 1990 with over $1 million in compensation, exposed a highly misguided and dark aspect of this legend's private life, turning him into a highly controversial figure. From a moral analytical perspective, Chuck Berry's betrayal was a serious violation of human privacy and dignity. For a world-class artist to use his property ownership to carry out substandard behaviors is inexcusable. I believe that the arrogance of genius made him believe he stood above the law and conventional moral rules. The breach of trust here was not just with his family, but with millions of fans who once saw him as a model of rising up. Those secret videotapes permanently tarnished the aura of Johnny B. Goode, turning him into a symbol of character decline behind the stage lights. For mature audiences, we view Chuck Berry with unceasing regret. He passed away in 2017 at the age of 90, taking with him a massive musical legacy, but also one full of scratches. His story is a costly lesson in awakening. No brilliant success can cover up mistakes in character. His music may still play at parties, but his private story will forever be a wake-up call about maintaining integrity. We cherish what he did for music, but we must also look frankly at the shadows to understand that true greatness must go hand in hand with respect for people. Behind Johnny B. Goode is a difficult-to-accept dark corner of Chuck Berry. But that is not all, because coming up next is the story of another genius, the man who created rock and roll but became a nightmare for his own legendary wife, Tina Turner. Do not take your eyes off the screen. Ike Turner. Ike Turner is one of the most controversial figures in music history. He is considered one of the fathers of rock and roll with his illustrious recording, Rocket 88. Ike possessed a musical mindset ahead of his time, a supreme band leadership ability, and was the one who discovered the natural talent of Tina Turner. However, that brilliant legacy was completely buried by dark corners in his private life, where he became a symbol of possessiveness and uncontrolled behavior toward his partner. From an analytical perspective, Ike Turner's tragedy is the tragedy of misplaced power. He was a perfectionist in art, but that perfectionism morphed into imposition and harshness in family life. I believe that Ike confused managing a band with loving a human being. The betrayal here was not just about loyalty, but a betrayal of the vow to protect the woman who helped build his empire. The abuse of stimulants in later years only worsened the deep chasms, turning a highly talented man into a completely isolated individual when Tina Turner's aura began to shine brighter than ever. For mature audiences, Ike Turner's story brings a reflection on the price of authoritarianism. We cannot deny his contributions to black music, but we cannot excuse the emotional wounds he caused. He passed away in 2007 amidst the public's coldness, leaving a costly lesson about this true greatness does not lie in how many people you control, but in whether you can control your own harsh instincts. Ike Turner remains forever a reminder that when the heart lacks compassion, all artistic glory is merely a shell for a lost soul. Al Green. Al Green possesses an angelic voice, someone who can make even the most hardened hearts sob through love songs like Let's Stay Together. He is the symbol of charm and pure love. However, the shocking tragedy in 1974, when his lover Mary Woodson caused a severe burn incident while he was bathing, exposed a highly ironic truth about the private life of the future minister. Al Green's betrayal of multiple women at the same time was the spark for a devastating outburst that changed his life forever. Through the lens of cause and effect, Al Green's tragedy is a stern warning about the errors of the flesh. While he used his singing voice to preach about eternal love in real life, he fell into a tangled web of romances with many women sowing hope only to betray them. I assess that Mary Woodson's actions, though unjustifiable through physical harm, reflected the ultimate despair of a deceived woman. Al Green's betrayal was not just of his lover, but of the very holy values he represented. The burned scar on his back is a permanent mark, reminding him of the price of infidelity and deceit in love. For older audiences, Al Green's later career as a minister is a reflective journey of redemption. We see a man who had to step through physical pain and character humiliation to find himself again. This story teaches us that loyalty is not a choice, but a supreme moral commitment to protect oneself and those around us from unnecessary tragedies. Al Green remains forever proof that even if you have the voice of an angel, you will still face worldly consequences if your heart lacks honesty and respect for those who loved you. Rick James. Rick James, the super freak of funk, was the one who brought new life to the Motown empire in the 80s with the hit Super Freak. He was the embodiment of freedom, liberality, and intense magnetic pull on stage. Yet behind the brilliant exterior with intricate braids and sparkling outfits was a private life, submerged in the darkness of dependency and severe emotional manipulation. The climax was the shocking lawsuit in 1991 when he was accused of violating a woman's dignity and freedom, leading to a prison sentence and the complete collapse of a musical monument. From an analytical perspective, Rick James's tragedy is the tragedy of a soul swallowed by a lifestyle of hedonism, extreme pleasure-seeking. When fame and money came too fast, Rick James created his own world where he was the only law. I believe the greatest betrayal here is that he used his talent to excuse behaviors lacking moral standards. His considering himself the symbol of indulgence made him lose his clarity, leading to irreversible mistakes. The breach of trust here was not only with personal relationships, but with the very name Rick James that millions of fans once loved. Looking back at Rick James's journey, middle-aged viewers cannot help but feel regret for a great talent who lacked the strength to resist temptation. He passed away in 2004 with various banned substances in his system, a sad death for a person who once made the whole world dance. His story reminds us that fame is a double-edged sword, and without the cultivation of character, it will turn back to cut off all good human values. Loyalty to a healthy lifestyle and respect for human boundaries are prerequisites to maintaining one's status. Rick James is a wake-up call for all who are intoxicated by the aura and forget to practice kindness and self-respect. David Ruffin. David Ruffin, the mesmerizing lead voice of The Temptations through the hit My Girl, is one of Motown's greatest singers. He possessed a dapper appearance, a captivating performance style, and a tenor voice beautiful enough to melt any heart. However, behind that brilliant aura was a life submerged in the darkness of dependency, arrogance, and harsh behaviors toward the woman he loved, the legend Tammy Terrell. David Ruffin's betrayal was not just with personal relationships, but with the very natural talent God bestowed upon him. Analyzing this figure deeply, we see the tragedy of an oversized ego and a lack of instinctive control. David considered himself the center of the universe, demanding the group's name be changed to David Ruffin, and the Temptations leading to his dismissal and the start of a painfully self-destructive journey. The betrayal of Tammy Terrell, a woman who was already carrying a serious illness, is a stain that cannot be washed away. I believe that David's hot temper and indulgent lifestyle were the consequences of not knowing how to love himself. The breach of trust here is that he used his singing voice to preach about sweet love, but brought pain to those closest to him. His passing in a shabby hotel with an excessive dose of illicit substances was an inevitable end for a life always running away from the truth. For our older audience, David Ruffin is a profound regret. We love My Girl, but must also feel sorrow for the one who sang it. His story reminds us of the importance of humility and forgiveness. When an artist lets fame blind them, they lose the wings to fly higher. Loyalty to morality and responsibility to oneself are the only things that can protect us from the storms of life. David Ruffin remains forever a warning. Do not let the demons inside win over the angel in your voice, for the most painful betrayal is betraying the mission to bring beauty to the world. Bobby Womack. Bobby Womack was one of the deepest soul artists, someone guided and treated like a younger brother by the legend Sam Cooke. He possessed a signature, raspy, experienced voice and a genius songwriting ability. However, Bobby Womack's private life faced the fiercest wave of criticism in R&B history when he decided to marry Barbara Campbell, Sam Cooke's widow, just 3 months after his teacher's death. This action not only shocked Sam Cooke's family, but caused the entire black community at the time to turn their backs on him, viewing it as the pinnacle of betrayal. Analyzing this event deeply, we see a moral and psychological fall. Marrying the wife of the late mentor, right when the pain had not yet subsided, was an insensitive act, if not an insult to the benefactor who uplifted him. I assess that Bobby Womack at that time let impulsive emotions and personal ego overshadow his self-respect and the principle of gratitude. This incident not only tarnished his image, but also led to a chain of subsequent tragedies, including a highly controversial relationship with Sam Cooke's stepchild later on. The betrayal here was a betrayal of the trust and dignity Sam Cooke had given him. With our older audience, the story of Bobby Womack is a painful lesson about filial piety and gratitude. Although he later strove to make amends through music, the stain of breaching trust with his late teacher always remained a sad note in his career. This story teaches us that in life, sometimes a wrong emotional decision can destroy an entire reputation we painstakingly built. Loyalty to ideals and gratitude is the core foundation of a mature person, and when that foundation is shaken, all brilliant success becomes meaningless in the eyes of the world. Donny Hathaway. Donny Hathaway was dubbed the Angel of Soul, someone possessing a singing voice capable of soothing all pain. His duets with Roberta Flack became the standard of soulful harmony. Yet behind those sweet melodies was a fierce and painful battle with paranoid schizophrenia. Unlike baseless rumors about assassination plots, the death of Donny Hathaway in 1979 was a tragedy of ultimate loneliness and the betrayal of his own mind against his body. Analyzing Donny's life deeply, we see a heartbreaking truth about mental health care in the black artist community of that era. Donny lived in the torment of hallucinations, believing people were watching and plotting against him through every guitar string, every musical note. I believe the greatest betrayal here did not come from humans, but from the lack of a medical support system and social empathy. The fact that he exhibited unusual behaviors with his wife and children during panic attacks was not his true nature, but the cry for help of a soul being torn apart. His departure at the age of 33 was a sharp pain, piercing the hearts of soul music lovers, leaving a void that nothing could fill. For our middle-aged audience, Donny Hathaway is a memory of wounded purity. His story reminds us of the importance of understanding psychological issues. Sometimes those who bring the greatest joy to the world are those enduring the deepest pain. Donny's loyalty to music was absolute, but he was betrayed by his own genius when it came with an overwhelmingly heavy mental burden. We cherish his talent, but also take it as a lesson to care more for the loved ones around us, because timely attention is sometimes more valuable than any glory on stage. Billy Preston. Billy Preston was dubbed the sixth member of the Beatles, the only black keyboard genius ever to be credited alongside this legendary band. He was a soul of funk and someone who could make organs sing like angels, yet behind that radiant smile and voluminous hair was a life besieged by dark secrets, legal troubles, and never fully released fears about his gender identity and past mistakes. Analyzing this figure deeply, we see the tragedy of a translator for heaven who lived in his own hell. Scandals related to substandard behavior with minors and financial lawsuits seriously tarnished his aura. I assess that the greatest betrayal here was that Billy allowed deviant desires and a lack of self-discipline to destroy the trust of his greatest colleagues. When a man is admired by the whole world for his talent, but lives in fear of being exposed, he becomes lonelier than ever. His being silently pushed to the margins by the music industry after the scandals was a bitter punishment for failing to protect his honor. For our older audience, Billy Preston is an infinite regret. We cherish his magical melodies, but must also look frankly at the hidden corners to understand that talent is never a free pass for a person to stand above morality. He passed away in 2006 after a long battle with illness, carrying unanswered questions. Billy Preston's story teaches us a lesson in awakening. Do not let locked doors in the soul become a breeding ground for darkness. Loyalty to basic moral values is the only anchor keeping the ship of a career from sinking amidst the tempting ocean of fame. Jackie Wilson. Jackie Wilson. Mr. Excitement was one of the artists with the most profound influence on the styles of Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson. He possessed an incredible tenor voice and dance moves that could make any stage explode. However, Jackie Wilson's private life was a picture full of fragments, with numerous unacknowledged children, child support lawsuits, and a lack of responsibility toward the many women who passed through his life. His brilliant career ended in a painful tragedy when he suffered a stroke right on stage and lived in a vegetative coma for 9 years before passing away. Analyzing Jackie Wilson's character deeply, we see a man who seemed to truly live only when standing under the spotlight, but was completely lost when returning to real life. His betrayal of the women and dozens of unacknowledged children is a testament to the selfishness of a superstar who was too intoxicated by the admiration of the crowd. I assess that Jackie Wilson used his aura as a shield to evade his responsibilities as a father and a husband. This breach of trust led to a bitter consequence. When he lay on a hospital bed for nearly a decade, the care from those close to him and the music industry seemed to vanish in direct proportion to his ability to earn money. For older audiences, Jackie Wilson's story evokes a silent sorrow. We cherish his contributions to music, but cannot help but reflect on the value of human connection. He passed away in 1984 in poverty and neglect, a sad end for someone who was once the king of glamorous stages. This story teaches us that never let fame blind you to the point of forgetting the people who truly belong in your life. Loyalty and responsibility to family are the only things that remain when the aura vanishes. Jackie Wilson remains a reminder that a resounding voice on stage cannot fill the emptiness of a life lacking kindness and loyalty. Sylvester. Sylvester was dubbed the Queen of Disco, a black man who bravely publicized his gender identity as early as the 70s, a time when stigma was still incredibly harsh. He possessed a soaring falsetto voice and a radiant performance style that broke all gender norms. However, Sylvester's private life was a journey full of pain, as he was frequently betrayed by those he trusted and turned away by society at the time when he needed empathy the most. From an analytical perspective, Sylvester's tragedy is that of a person born too early for his time. The betrayal here did not just come from individuals, but was the betrayal of a community that cheered him when he was healthy, yet quickly grew cold when he contracted the century's disease in the late 80s. I highly appreciate Sylvester's resilience as he used his final moments to raise awareness for HIV/AIDS, despite being forgotten by record labels and major stages. The breach of trust by friends and lovers who sold his private secrets to the press was a fatal blow to the self-esteem of an artist who always lived true to himself. Looking back at Sylvester's life, middle-aged audiences can feel the sadness of a lonely star. He passed away in 1988 at the age of 41, leaving behind a musical legacy full of freedom, but also full of tears. His story reminds us of the value of compassion and loyalty in the most difficult times. Do not only love someone when they are brilliant, be with them when they are weakest. Sylvester remains forever a lesson in courage when living true to oneself, and also a wake-up call about the coldness of fame, something that can take you to the top, but can also abandon you in the dark when you no longer have commercial value. Millie Jackson. If there was a woman who dared to challenge all the strict moral standards of the 70s music industry, it was Millie Jackson. She did not just sing. She used music as a forum to expose naked truths about love, betrayal, and human instinct. With the classic album Still Caught Up, Millie broke the boundary between art and real life by including dramatic dialogues and even controversial sounds that left the R&B world of the time stunned and blushing. From an analytical perspective, the darkness in Millie Jackson's private life was actually a rebellion against the imposition of patriarchal power. While male artists were allowed to freely express instinct, a woman doing the same was considered dangerous and lacking standards. I believe Millie's tragedy was the loneliness of someone ahead of her time. She was turned away by major labels and received threatening letters from fans just for daring to say things women at the time were forced to keep secret. The betrayal here was of a system that always wanted to mold women into obedient angels. Her being restricted by a former lover just because of a song that was too real shows the exorbitant price of honesty in art. For mature audiences, we view Millie Jackson with admiration for her courage. Although she lived in the coldness of mainstream media for many years, she never regretted being herself. Her story teaches us that the truth is often hard to hear, but it is the only thing that can free humans from the chains of falsehood. Millie departed in later years quietly in Atlanta, but her legacy of raw feminism remains a costly lesson in preserving personal identity amidst a world full of judgment and prejudice. Joe Tex. Joe Tex was a unique personality of soul music, a man with a liberal cowboy style and authentic lyrics. He was respected for his songwriting ability and passionate performance style. However, Joe Tex's private life was haunted by a persistent feud with the King James Brown, a battle that began with emotional betrayal and ended with severe mental distress that tarnished both their careers. Analyzing this figure deeply, we see the tragedy of a quick temper and envy. Joe Tex challenging James Brown right on stage over a woman is proof that he let his personal ego overshadow his career. The betrayal here was letting his wounded pride turn into blind hatred. I assess that the alarming incident involving a weapon in Macon, Georgia, was not just an impulsive act, but the outburst of a soul that could not find peace. His being banned from performing at many major venues afterward was an inevitable conclusion for turning art into an arena for personal conflicts. Loyalty to his career was placed behind immediate fits of anger. With our middle-aged audience, Joe Tex's story evokes regret for a great talent. We see that in life, maintaining composure in the face of emotional events is a man's greatest bravery. Joe Tex passed away in 1982, carrying burdens that were never fully resolved. His story teaches us that never let a heart wound turn you into an aggressive person, for hatred only causes our talent to fade faster. Forgiveness and focusing on self-worth is the sweetest revenge against past betrayals. Gene Chandler, the Duke of Earl, was the model of an elegant gentleman with sleek hair and crisp white tuxedos. He brought luxurious beauty and composure to 60s R&B. Yet behind that perfect exterior were silent investigations into a lifestyle that lacked standards behind the scenes. Allegations of him using his fame to organize unhealthy gatherings involving young fans seriously fractured the image of a moral icon he had painstakingly built. From a moral, analytical perspective, Gene Chandler's tragedy is the tragedy of being two-faced. When a man builds a career based on the image of an exemplary gentleman, every mistake in his private life becomes doubly serious. The betrayal here is a betrayal of the public's trust. I assess that Gene Chandler let the glamour of fame blind him, making him believe a white tuxedo could cover the flaws in his behavior. The fact that he was never officially prosecuted does not mean he was innocent before the court of his fans' conscience. His declining career was the heaviest punishment for swapping the true value of a gentleman for falsehood. For mature audiences, Gene Chandler's story brings an awakening about not judging a book by its cover. We cherish his wonderful melodies, but also need to look frankly at the shadows to understand that true elegance must stem from internal character, not from expensive clothes. Loyalty to the image one represents is the measure of an artist's honor. Gene Chandler remains a reminder that the truth, no matter how sophisticatedly covered under sunny smiles, will eventually leave scars that are hard to fade in the hearts of those who once fully trusted. Ladies and gentlemen, the 19 lives with their highs and lows we just explored serve as a profound reminder. No matter how brilliant the aura, it can never replace the peace of conscience and the home. We hope this video has brought you precious moments of reflection on the value of loyalty and kindness. We wish you always have warm and happy moments with your family. If you love this content, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to support us. Thank you, and see you in the next videos.